Today's conversation with Chris Boyd distilled a common theme across many of my recent interviews. This pandemic and how law firms are adjusting to it is a teaching moment. It fosters a we can do it state of mind when it comes to talent management, staffing matters, and other key underlying processes in the firm. I think and hope that the lingering effect will be firm leadership that's more confident implementing significant changes that up until a few months ago were at best done incrementally. Welcome to Law Firm Weekly. It's great to have you here. Chris Boyd is the Chief Operating Officer with Wilson Sonsini. In the past, he practiced technology and life sciences law. And to make things even more interesting, he has experience with management consulting. Chris, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Shai. I appreciate your inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Wonderful. So last time we talked was last week, and I caught you, and I think it was the first time I caught you in your office, your physical office, after many, many months of not being there. Is that correct?
That is absolutely right. I returned to our Palo Alto office, which is our largest office in our firm headquarters, for the first time since the Bay Area shelter-in-place orders came down in mid-March. And I went into the office not because I have a burning desire to go back, although I do enjoy being at the office, but because we as a firm have built a protocol for getting into the office when one absolutely needs to, including making a formal request online, acknowledging the conditions of being in the office, watching a training video, and then passing a self-assessment for COVID symptoms. And since we're asking all employees to comply with this, I thought as COO, I should try it myself. And fortunately, it works really well.
What's your working assumption? And I know it's anybody's guess, but what's your working assumption as you're planning ahead as to when, generally speaking, things will come back to normal from your point of view?
Not till 2021 at the earliest is our working assumption.
So everything that you're doing right now is to make sure that operationally, how the firm is working, I'm assuming, is to continue and build on top of what it is that you've done to date. What is the one or two most important areas that you continue to improve, work from home or working away from the office?
I wish there were only one or two. The initial move to working remotely went very well. Over time, we've made tweaks to that, obviously. We've discovered a lot about various collaboration platforms and what works, what doesn't work. We set up a team engage, which looks to the cultural and process sides of working remotely and sends out weekly tips on how to make the most of the remote work experience, which for many people is certainly challenging, and we're trying to accommodate that wherever possible. So over time, over the past few months, we've certainly made tweaks to the operational aspects of working remotely. It's really important that we stay in touch with clients. So certainly all of our lawyers and many of our staff, me included, are talking to clients to make sure we continue to meet their needs as they're working remotely. We found that we do need to adjust a lot of our talent management processes for working remotely, whether that be the performance evaluations, the promotions considerations, compensation, and so forth. And it goes down to something as basic as onboarding new employees. Doing it completely remotely, again, is very different, but it can be done. Maybe not quite as effectively as doing it in person, but we've set up a whole way to onboard people, to integrate them with their work teams, help them get to know the firm and people on a remote basis. So a lot of those lessons learned will apply to onboarding a huge group of brand new lawyers who are excited to start their careers here, but certainly will be doing so under unusual conditions. So we're going to do the best we can to make that as productive and seamless an experience as possible. You know, in the near term, the biggest operational and cultural issue for the firm will probably be helping workers, lawyers and staff who are parents of younger children, especially school-age children, who won't have schools to go back to in the fall. We're looking to ways to help relieve that burden, whether it's with daycare or teaching or other resources, and we'll be rolling out some programs to help employees in the future.
So in our discussion, you raised a really interesting point. You mentioned the new opportunities that are emerging, not exclusively, but especially for attorneys, maybe even associates, in that because the firm is starting to recognize more than ever, for obvious reasons, that the firm is more than just offices. It's people working from just about anywhere. You mentioned that you see some really interesting opportunities there. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yes, it's a great question, and certainly the downside of the pandemic has been very well publicized and experienced by many. But there are some upsides, and one of them is that location becomes much less important, to some extent irrelevant, when it comes time to getting opportunities to work on different types of matters with different supervising lawyers for different clients and so forth. And work allocation or staffing is really critical to a young lawyer's development. And we've used the fact that everybody's now working remotely to help get young lawyers more opportunities to work with people across the firm. Just yesterday, I was talking to one of our partners in Palo Alto who is extremely busy right now with a series of public offerings, mergers and acquisitions activity, late stage private financings, and needs help. And so our corporate career development leader, who also works on staffing and work allocation across the entire corporate practice, very quickly sent him the names of 8 or 10 associates not in the Bay Area who are more than willing to help out with those transactional matters. And these are lawyers that this partner might not have worked with otherwise. So some of those will get to work with him and with his lieutenants. And that just opens up a lot of opportunities for those young lawyers to get more exposure, to learn more quickly, to build stronger relationships within and outside of the firm. So the fact that everybody is working remotely and specific location becomes less important for staffing is a real opportunity for young lawyers.
I want to actually look at that and then flip it to the other side. And the other side is there an opportunity longer term, well beyond the period that we're in, when more people will work from their homes or away from the office, to structure differently some of the files, to staff the files with attorneys who may be working, as an example, just part-time, and therefore giving the firm more flexibility. And I guess the second part, if you agree that that's not impossible, whether or not it's going to affect pricing and how it's structured for the client.
Yeah, if there's one thing that the global pandemic generally and working remotely specifically has taught, it's that large changes can be effected relatively quickly and efficiently. And it has also caused a lot more flexible thinking for the better on the part of leaders, partners, and others. And so we are hiring more remotely. We are staffing more remotely. We are going to staff matters, I think that's what you mean by files, in different ways, and including lawyers who aren't necessarily on the associate track. They're either more junior or more senior. And we're going to do that just to provide more value to clients so that we can be more efficient and effective. We're also going to create roles where people work on one type of matter more frequently so they become better at it and more efficient at it, and therefore enable a client to get a better result for a lower price. There's a lot more openness now because people have seen that we can make a big change like this. We were working on most of these initiatives beforehand, but the work from home situation, which we had to adopt very quickly, has really caused the amount of interest in change and the flexibility to adapt to change to grow, which is great.
And assuming that obviously that work from home idea will continue, and I think that that's the premise of our discussion today. It's not just limited to this period we're in. Obviously, not everyone is going to continue working from home. Obviously, many will come back to the office and there'll be some kind of a blended model ultimately. Mm-hmm. That being said, it requires a certain discipline when people are working away from the office. What does it mean, if at all, to how you hire, who you hire, or how you educate and train people in that context?
Yeah, they're working from home all the time is not an ideal situation. Relatively senior people can do it, but we firmly believe that young employees, whether lawyers or staff, really benefit from being part of an office environment, from learning side by side, from watching more senior practitioners do what they do. For example, we have an extensive shadowing program where we give billable hour credit to younger lawyers to watch a more senior lawyer advise a client, present to a board of directors, appear in court, negotiate with a counterparty, and so forth. And the anecdotal feedback on that has been phenomenal. Now, shadowing can be done remotely, and we certainly enabled that over the course of working remotely, but it's better done in person. There's just a lot you can pick up on more easily by doing it in person. But the critical learning has been that one doesn't have to be in the office all the time for that to occur. And we will definitely offer more flexibility to lawyers and staff to work remotely once we're sort of back to steady state. once there's a vaccine and a cure and we're back to somewhat normal conditions. And frankly, firms or other companies that don't offer that flexibility will suffer in recruiting and retaining talented employees, because that's what people will want in the future, is that option or more flexibility. So we certainly don't want 100% remote environment all the time, but we do want to offer that as a greater option going forward.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's the end of the time that we have here, Chris. I know you're extremely busy for obvious reasons, so I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. It was fascinating.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, Shai. I appreciate it. Have a good day.